Good evening. Welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. We have Andrew, and Andrew is from Rip to Shreds. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good, good. I've listened to your album this week and enjoying it. It's pretty aggressive.
Yeah, I think when it comes to death metal, I generally like it to be more on the raw and aggressive side. So definitely, you know, pulling inspiration from like Repulsion or early Terrorizer or even like early Napalm Death.
When did the album start? 'Cause I'm trying to follow you on Bandcamp. You have some songs, but like, what's the band itself? You know, the core of it. When did you start the
Uh,
songwriting for this?
the songwriting for the new album started sometime last year around like April or so. And it took me maybe about 2 months to get all the basic arrangements and music down. So like we started off originally it was like a one-man band. I'm writing all the music and playing all the instruments. But maybe around late 2019, I brought in Brian and Ryan, and because I wanted to play live shows locally,
Hmm.
and eventually, it just made sense to make them real members of the band. Um, but the writing process is still mainly I come up with music, I come up with some real basic drum machine stuff, and then I hand it over to the other guys, and then they have the freedom to do whatever they want with it. Brian has a very different approach to drums than I do. He has a slightly different background. He comes more from the hardcore scene. He listened to like a lot of brutal death metal growing up, so he has a different perspective about drumming than I do. And for Ryan, um, when I was playing bass myself on the albums, because I have to think of everything else on the album all at once. It's real easy to fall into the trap. Okay, I'm just gonna follow the guitar riff,
Yeah.
and the bass can be a bit boring that way. And then when I hand it off to Ryan, he doesn't need to think about anything else. He doesn't need to think about vocals, drums, or whatever. He only needs to focus on the bass, which frees him up to think, okay, how can I make the bass line more interesting? Where can I introduce some variations so I can emphasize this part or smooth the transition to the next part? And in turn, not needing to make those things perfect on my end uh, gives me more bandwidth to think about um, vocals and lyrics and arrangement, and then I don't really need to worry so much about, okay, I got some real basic stuff here, and then I need to start doing this part over here and this part over here. So I feel like, that really smoothed out the songwriting process for me and let me come up with mm, things I might not necessarily have done on the first couple of records.
Now, this is the first records were just you originally,
Yeah.
most of them, and so this is it. And have you guys played out live or anything yet? I've seen there's some video and stuff, but have you really pressed the flesh, met the people?
Yeah. We played I think we played two shows in 2020, and then we were going to play a whole bunch of shows up and down the West Coast, but of course COVID happened, and that kind of put a kibosh on all our plans there. And then I think Albert from Decibel Magazine invited us to play at the Decibel Metal and Beer Festival in LA for late 2020, in winter 2021. And so we had a couple of like warm-up gigs before that. We played that festival. Then we supported Cruelty when they came to America. And then we played once in like Oxnard and once in Cupertino. And then we played a whole bunch of other random local gigs, like kind of in the area. And we went to Seattle for Northwest Terror Fest. So I mean, we've played a whole bunch together now, and we kind of have, I guess, a rapport going. We understand what the other dudes are going to do. And then next April we're heading off to Europe, and we're going to play like 2 weeks there.
Like I said, it's pretty cool. Now, do you guys like people have to like take vacation time or juggle their
Yeah,
schedules?
yeah.
Because a lot of
We're
guys are
all
either
like,
workers
mhm.
or work in a studio, do something music related. They're also in like 15 bands. Everybody, so
Yeah. Yeah, we're all like regular office workers, so we gotta request PTO, take it
yeah,
off. So it's I mean it's not easy being in a band that's trying to be a bit more serious, I
yeah.
guess. But it's fun, so that's
Well, I mean,
the
that's really it
fun of
just
me.
comes down to labor love because it's a really hard spot to go from here and like risk your career because you have a couple good months of doing something when there's nothing guaranteed in music. All of a sudden, you're like you don't
Mhm.
want to like step away from your job, which is paying for your health care and everything else. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, definitely.
it's a hard call to really do it. You know, but it's exciting the fact you get an offer to go over to Europe. I mean,
Right,
awesome.
right. I think everyone in the band is pretty much on the same page when it comes to we we're not really interested in being a professional band that's out on the road 6 months out of the year. um I mean, we all love death metal, we all love playing music. It's really fun to play with each other. So we try to do as much as we can with it, but um I think we're all in agreement that we don't want to. We're not trying to be the next Cannibal Corpse.
Um, to that point, though, I mean, you can still be considered, and say professional. You can still be professional because a lot of bands at this level that put out great, strong albums, especially in death metal and in the heavier metal side, are full working people, and you can still put out good quality albums and play a few shows. It's just there are limits on your time. That's what's being, and a lot of those bands are like they're not making money over it anyhow,
Hmm.
and limited shows are what they're doing now, and COVID showed that.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I talk a lot with other band people, and I think especially if you're looking at bands that just tour a ton, but are still like relatively underground. You got Skeletal Remains, or Blood Incantation, or Necrot, or Undeath, or Sangui Sugabog. They all have to make pretty big sacrifices when it comes to like the 9 to 5 job. A lot of people I know, they have to just quit their job and then go on tour, and then when they come back, then they got to find a new job.
Yeah,
So um
a lot of construction
from
workers.
yeah, from what I've seen, a lot of the bands, I mean, we're like a tier below those bands, but the bands that are out there constantly touring, they my impression is they can't really keep a 9 to 5 job just because the touring is that demanding.
Right, and they also have a hard time paying their bills too. It's just like this that's the love, and there's going to be a point where they have to step away. Because I know I talk to a lot of bands at this level where they're like they do that and they're going to enjoy it for the time, and then they're like I can't have a full life like this. I can't, you know,
Hmm.
um, move on. And it's a challenge. And I know some of the bands and some bands actually have like their own businesses or they work remotely, so they take the computer on the road
Hmm.
while they're on
Right,
the
right.
bus or the van or wherever they're at in the car. They're doing their job, and it doesn't matter where they're at. Which
Yeah,
this COVID's opened a new world for that though, at least telecommuting.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I telecommute to work. But I guess I see other bands. They burn out because they have to make a choice between we're going to jump to the next level, we're going to make this our career, we're going to do this full time, or we're going to stagnate and not go anywhere. So for me, I don't want to make that decision.
Right. There's a lot of
Because I
bands that
don't.
just stay at that level because they want to be at that level
Mhm.
and they enjoy it. It's there's no stigma to like not like everyone. You don't have to keep growing forever and ever. You know what I mean? You're doing something
Yeah,
you enjoy. Why do you have to stop doing it? I mean, it's not a bad thing.
yeah, yeah.
Are you another banzo too?
Yeah. I mean, luckily, the other ones are not playing live, or I would be really hosed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I so I have like a gore grind project. I have a whole bunch of like death metal or heavy metal bands with my friends. But I mean, one of them I might take live next year. But that would be more of like a one man band, and I'm playing along to like a drum machine, kind of like a Putrid Pile does.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not totally sure when I want to do that, but I, it's definitely easier for me if I'm not playing live all the time. Yeah,
Right. You get to balance it out.
yeah,
Because
but I mean, like the other dudes in my band, like Brian is also in Spinebreaker, and they've been a little bit inactive this year, but normally they play a bunch. And both Mike and Ryan, they're in Doomsday. Mike is in like Condition Critical and Hematoxin. And I mean, I don't know how Ryan keeps up with it, because his band plays like twice a month or something. They're playing tomorrow.
that's crazy. I don't understand
Yeah.
how people can maintain not just one band or be in a band and record an album. And I know some people are in our bands and they're going to school and they're doing this and that, and they're two other bands and it's crazy. I don't know how they could do it. I could
Yeah.
only be in one thing at a time.
You really have to compartmentalize. And I definitely think it's true that you can't, it's basically impossible to be putting the same amount of effort into every band. Um, like I can't possibly do as much writing for the other bands as I do for Rip to Shreds.
Right.
So for an album, maybe instead of writing 10 songs, I'd be writing like two, and the other guys are making up for that. So you have to learn to juggle, otherwise it's you don't have enough time.
What are some of your favorite songs off this album now that it's done and you've had time to marinate? Even the
I,
best song, and somebody doesn't know the band too. Say, this is the track I want you to hear.
hmm, um, Split Apart and Race Trader. I think those two. Yeah,
Yeah,
I would pick those two.
those are two. Okay. Let's talk about some of the band art. I always love the art. Who's doing the art?
Sorry?
What's the I said I always love the art of death
Oh, yeah,
metal
okay, yeah.
bands. Um, it's a challenge for me to read the names always, which I just think everyone just makes it harder and harder and harder.
Mhm.
It's like a competition. Who's doing your artwork?
It's a painter from Beijing. His name's Guang Yang. He did the art for my previous record, the previous Rip to Shreds record as well. I mostly became aware of him through Chinese black metal bands.
Hmm.
He's done stuff for like Zuriake, Black Kirin, Ritual Day, and when it comes to like the themes of the album, I felt like it was because like the first album and the EP after that, they were drawn by an Icelander and an Italian, and
Hmm.
I mean they turned out awesome works of art. But I have to direct them and be like, okay, this image is important in Chinese culture because it's blah 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 blah. And when I engage a Chinese painter, he already has all that cultural context in the background,
Right.
and he can he doesn't need me to tell him anything beyond, okay, I have this general image in mind, and I can trust him to turn it into something great. And that's
Like this album cover. Could you talk about this album cover? And the name of it and everything?
oh yeah. So the new album is called Jubian, and on the cover, the statue that's being destroyed is um a sea goddess called Mazu, and she's kind of important in the southern parts of China. So like the Fujian province or Taiwan, and then people like pray to her for good fish harvests, gentle weather, that kind of stuff. And I wanted to kind of because the title means downfall, and I guess I wanted to express this theme of the world going to shit, but in a way that made sense to me.
So would you say your stuff is kind of political, kind of earth feeling, like not just about politicians in particular, but more about because because I'm saying we're more universal now, and it's great. Like you said, Chinese black metal, and before, and way back in the time, everything was like tape trading or whatever. It was just very much in little areas. But
Hmm.
now I can go on the internet and you can dump yourself right into a new world. You know,
Right, right.
I talk to more people around the world than I do locally now at this point. You know, uh, so do you think that like it affected your songwriting and your influence at all?
Uh, I mean, definitely a lot of the bands that influenced the new record are not, local Bay Area bands. I mean, I love Bay Area death metal. I mean, I'm pretty biased, but I think we have some of the best death metal bands in the world. We got
Yeah.
Autopsy, we got Mortuis, Vastum, Acephalix, uh, just a ton of amazing shit from the Bay. But uh, the influences for this one, are coming from like I mean, of course, there's the obvious Entombed and Dismember
Right.
and Bolt Thrower, but I'm also pulling like from Finnish death metal, um, from Japanese death metal, um, and also like other American bands that are, Texas or New Jersey. So, I mean, it is music from all over, and it's probably not something that you could have done back in 85 or 86.
I do like to me the raw sound still feels brings me back to the old style. And it's always funny when really aggressive bands are like are from like really beautiful places like you like Netherlands or Iceland and the Bay, like just some like beautiful scenery. I get like you stoner doom metal when you're like out in the hot desert, you're just too tired to do anything aggressive. It feels
Right,
like the
right.
environment. But I'm like you live in a beautiful area and it's just like this most aggressive music for inspiration. It's not like you're locked in a 24/7 in a small room because of the weather.
I think this aggression comes more from like a mental state of mind rather than necessarily, what it looks like outside. But like I know, because I feel like when I listen to black metal, the stereotypical image of like
Yes,
Norwegian black metal is like snow, right? But I very rarely get that feeling when I actually listen to it.
I agree with you.
Like Immortal, it's called At the Heart of Winter, but you know, it doesn't really sound wintry to
Well,
me.
that's some points. It's very beautiful. Like, I know these places are beautiful, and people
Mhm.
see this one thing and they have this one image from the outside. That's why I always
Right.
find it funny because you see one thing and I know what it really is. So it's interesting to share with people, I'm trying to be the middle person, what the difference is because it's not about the environment as much as you think it would be. You know,
Hmm.
I don't think so. You know, what are you drawing on for your like your lyrical ideas?
So mostly, we're a death metal band. We sing about horror, war, death, um, zombies, but I'm trying to filter it through my own cultural context. As a Taiwanese, as a Chinese, because it's just something that's not very explored in death metal. You look at all these war themed bands, and it's almost World War II, maybe a bit of World War One, and that's kind of it. And I just felt there's so much more that you can look at. There's all sorts of horrific, gruesome stories out there that
Oh
aren't
yeah,
just the same five things we've been singing about for 30 years. There's I mean, zombies are great. There's more than one kind of zombie. We have the Chinese hopping vampire. We have all we have like zombies that are like controlled by the ringing of bells. There's just so much more that you can do within this
hmm
horror theme that
the fast zombies are the ones that are the worst. I think the ones that just you just can't get away from them.
yeah.
I don't know what movie I just saw it. It was like that. It was just crazy. Um, it's like a series on Netflix. I can't remember what it is now. So yeah, I think it's great you do that, that you bring in different stuff because it can get old. I think it's good to have history and definitely bring in other cultures because it makes it fun, way more interesting, especially because, you know, like to say the Chinese black metal scene is not merging because it's two different continents, when you're not, as much as the internet can do it, it's still not going to translate the same.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, you're definitely waving a
Um,
flag for that over here.
yeah, I feel like a big part of it that, you know, I guess China, I mean, Asia has metal bands,
Well,
it
right.
has like the big ones are like X Japan or Loudness or I guess like Worm Rot, Impiety. But I think part of that is because, Japan and Singapore were westernized very early on. And rock music didn't really make it over to China until like early 90s. Because I don't remember his name. I know there is this one guy who's like called the godfather of rock music in China, and he started getting popular in the early 90s. So I
Really.
think part of the lack of metal from China specifically, is because it just came there so late. But I'm kind of hoping that like the new bands coming out of China now are going to be a bit more visible because like Zuriake, they recently just signed to Season of Mist, and they're like the longest running Chinese black metal band. Um, so hopefully, it'll slowly change.
It's interesting. The other challenge is now because I do hope so. Not that's not just for bands in China. I hope it's for like bands all over,
Right,
Brazil
right,
and
right.
Argentina. Like I'd love to see a big, melting pot, a big mixture. It's time. The only thing now is it's the market is so bad for music. Like you can do it internationally, and we can do this, but like touring and Brexit or all this stuff, or
Yeah,
in COVID or illnesses or this or policies or wars, and it makes that part of the on the road, fresh in the flesh, hand of the tapes, back in the day, that kind of thing is really a kind of hard thing to do now. It's
yeah,
become more of a multimedia, type of
yeah.
thing.
I mean, the music industry is definitely not the same as it was 30 years ago. And I definitely think metal, extreme metal, is something that's uh very traditional, and definitely very slow to change. We're still, we're still selling vinyl records, we're still selling cassettes. The concept of listening to a whole album rather than a couple of singles is still very much a, metal culture, I would say.
That is the basis of my
So
show. I go crazy if I have two or three throwaway songs. I just can't. I can't do that.
yeah.
You know, I don't make
um
playlists, so I get that. I do vinyl. and that's why it's important. I think the internet's actually helped save metal. It actually brought it back out
mhm,
because it doesn't matter what the record labels are picking out. It's popular. The two, the 2/4 beat. You know what I'm saying?
mhm,
The fans can just go online without having to, they go right to it, and it's helping the artists on that level. I think.
mhm. But you do see a lot of people talk about how Spotify is kind of um killing the idea that music should be consumed as an album and paid for as
Yes.
an album. And that's something I definitely agree with. um
Hmm.
radio, it's not really the same because you can't call into a radio and have them give you a personal, we're going to play exactly what you want to hear whenever you want to hear. So I think streaming music definitely completely changed um what value people put
Hmm.
on music. So I'm not really confident in metal being able to adapt to it, just because I see people sticking to the same ways that they purchase metal and consume metal that they have for over 30, 40 years now. So I'm a little bit pessimistic on that, but I hope people are still buying vinyl
Well,
in
I
20
think they are.
years
I
from
think
now.
I think they will. I think we're done with it. The violent research was a good thing. For a lot of people.
Mm.
It slowed up me getting some really good deals because I was already getting the albums before this resurgence. I was scooping them up. So, um, but I do think like I don't do Spotify because it actually confuses me because I don't even know how to listen to whole albums. I'm up on there on a podcast, but I will do iTunes. I like to see a model where a band can get its due and the album's there. But like you go, I went on iTunes today and I was listening to some band and it was the wrong title. They're an established band and they threw like there was one other band. It was like a DJ rap hip hop I don't know band had like one or two albums out in 2017, and this band had a catalog. They've been around for 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
This band got the write up for that, and all the artist stuff is there. That happens all the time in iTunes. It makes me
Mm-hmm.
crazy. But the fact you can still get an album though, I'd love to be able to have that, but also see the artists get their fair share from that. You know, and people that do skip around songs anyhow, they were doing it when they're buying tapes anyhow. I don't think it was the same audience. Spotify is a whole other world. Um, you know, one of the things is that bands can focus on their audience, they can make as much money now by just focusing on that 100% of their audience, not trying to do everybody. A lot
Yeah,
of them are
yeah,
still finding the
definitely.
same good revenue. Like, I used an example the other days. Instead of trying for like 1,000 people, you focus on 100, or you blow it up to 1,000 people, 100,000. That 1,000 people, you focus on that will generally give you more revenue than 100,000.
Yeah, yeah, for
That's
sure.
the metal model nowadays. I keep seeing. Um, I don't think there's a wrong model. I think some bands are doing singles, like they'll do like one song a month, and then at the end they'll collect them all together, some of the thoughts, and then put it out to a vinyl as a special edition for people.
Hmm.
That could be a meet in the middle situation. Although I hate singles, would make me crazy waiting a whole year.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
just want the album. That's it.
I don't vibe with that at all. I mean, if I was listening, to pop or, rap or something like that, I guess I'd be cool with it. But metal definitely to me is inextricably tied with the album format.
I think it's the album because the song listing goes. It's very important to me. The song order. It's almost like a story. Even if it's not a
Hmm.
story, it's musically it's a story. Sonically it's a story. The artwork, I like the artwork. I like the packaging to it. I like there to be, merchandise with it. I'm old school metal. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, I'm 52. So I mean I like it the whole thing, the way it was. It's an event. It's a whole thing. You're not just consuming one single and moving on and then forget about the song of the week. That's my jam. It's not really a thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
I mean,
if artists do what they need to do, I'm okay with metal artists doing what they need to do to survive too. Because
yeah. I mean, I look at our streaming demographics, and I think the median age is like 35 or something like that.
is it is
Yeah.
it so? What? Yeah. So what is it like? I'm curious. So, like, I love looking at demos myself, and I'm always trying to break them in areas because I want it to be so. I'm like, the whole world can listen to you. I try to have all kinds of different artists on my show. I want this to be like all kinds of age groups and genders. I want this for everybody. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I still look at it. And I'm like, it feels like it's the same demographic no matter what I do. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That
I
makes
think
me
that's tied
crazy.
to it's tied to metal being very
Yes.
traditional. It's tied to metal, the young kids aren't really listening to albums anymore. It's just not, because I was born in 1990, right? So even as I was growing up, the CD, the album was still a thing. But
Mm.
someone born like 2000 something, they might have never seen a CD in their life. They only know uh, YouTube singles, Spotify. They don't have the experience of
No, I agree. I
listening
agree.
to an album and buying the CD and flipping through the booklet. So I think that's part of why the demographics are like
50, 40,
just
35 to 55,
yeah,
90% male. Yeah.
yeah.
My kids, people like to look back and be like, oh, I remember kids' first steps. I remember the first time I taught each of my kids how to use my turntable and not scratch the records and take the records out right. That's like the first steps to me in my house.
Yeah. I mean,
That
my dad had a turntable, but he was like, as soon as CD came out, I threw away my turntable because the CD he only wanted the clean quality of the CD. He didn't like the surface noise.
it's hard. It's hard because at the time I couldn't afford a record player, so I had some CDs and the digital I did. But now that I had the choice now, I mean, I like to, and certain things only sound good on vinyl too.
Mhm.
I have a lot. Most of my albums are from the '60s to the '90s for most artists. You know what I mean? Now there's some more stuff being produced back for vinyl. For a long time, because you're doing the highs and the lows. They're crunching it anyhow, and then they're re-putting it, and then you're putting it on vinyl when it's already been like compressed wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
It doesn't sound the same. It doesn't. Um, and I want to hear something sound pretty good. I love the Misfits, but I don't. I got rid of the Misfits on vinyl. I'm like, I'm not going to listen to Misfits on vinyl. It's a waste of money. It's an experience, but it's not a sonically pleasing thing real
yeah,
loud when
yeah,
you can hear everything in that. That's where I feel. Um, but I love hearing a good metal album on vinyl. You know. So do you have
yeah. I
vinyl
mean,
now? Do you have a record player
hmm?
now?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a record?
I have,
Oh,
I have a record player. It doesn't get as much use as I would like to because I have it like set in another place. I have to bring it out, hook it up to my speakers. But I do find that um I, I I mean, strictly speaking, vinyl as a medium for carrying audio is it doesn't have the same reproduction that digital audio has. It doesn't have the same signal to noise ratio and all that. But I think of it as kind of entire experience.
yep.
You've got the ritual of setting up the table, about taking everything out of the packaging. So
The
it's
album
it's more
cover,
than just
the
more than
ritual.
just clicking going to Spotify, typing in the name of the album you want to listen to, and hitting play.
Well, you also don't get to read the song lyrics. I talk to people all the time.
Yeah,
I'm like,
that too.
at some point when they stop making albums, it's hard for me to even distinguish who wrote the song. You know what I mean? Maybe now I don't know who the costume designer is on the tour on the back of the Allman Brothers or something. You know what I'm saying? That's who did the catering. But I'm like, I'm not knowing who's writing the songs. And that's a challenge. And yes, with record players, you can get really low quality, and sonically, it's easier with a CD because you have that one thing always guaranteed. But with record players, you can go to a point where you can't go with a CD or anything
Hmm.
digitally. You know what I mean? It depends on where you're at with that. But to me, it's always I have a great system and then I have a small user system. I just like using the user system because it's still a ritual of taking it out. And that's what it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is this one gonna be in final? This in final? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, it's on vinyl.
All right, I'm gonna have to check out on vinyl then.
I relapse. I think they got back into vinyl in the early 2010s.
Yep.
I think like maybe like mid 2000s to there. I mean, there was like a period of 10 years there where they were only making CDs, but
Oh yeah.
I think vinyl now is like one of the most important merch items for any band. Yeah,
Well, especially for rock to metal all the way across the
yeah,
board.
yeah.
I don't think top 40 fans are going looking to get the new, so and so artist on vinyl. You know,
I mean, I bought the new Taylor Swift album on vinyl.
nah. Did you?
I did.
So I was gonna say this would be the album I would not expect from you, and I like that. I'm a big ABBA fan, so like there's no guilty music in my world.
ABBA is great.
The
ABBA's
songwriting
really
of
great.
ABBA and the melodies are just classic. They just melt. They
Hmm.
are. Um, ABBA and then actually the same thing with the Bee Gees, the harmonies of the Bee Gees, especially the early stuff, was just insane.
Hmm.
If you go back and listen to it. And it all roots back to it's funny because like a lot of metal people listen to a lot of really good early pop music or pop
Hmm.
too. You just don't expect it. It's like the
Right, right.
calendars with guys with death paint and cats. You're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what? It's like a thing. Now people are getting used to it. But yeah, I can't even tell
yeah.
who's final because we're running out
Mhm.
of vinyl right now. There's you know what I mean. So like some artists are like, yeah, it's on back order. So I never know if
Mhm.
they have it.
Yeah, I mean, especially for this album, so because everything I recorded in this room, mixed in this room, and I handed it to Damien from Horrendous to master it. So, we definitely tried to keep in mind what sounds good on vinyl,
Mhm.
because when you suck all the dynamic range out of the vinyl or out of the master, um, and you press it on vinyl, it just doesn't
It's a
sound good, right?
horrible record.
Yeah. So in the production process from the ground up, it's something that I'm keeping in mind because
Good.
like it's a merch item. I know, unfortunately, that maybe 80% of the people that buy the vinyl are not actually going to put it in a record player and listen to it. I
You know,
know they're buying it to collect the colors, but for the people that do put it on their turntable, I want it to sound good.
that's awesome. And now I want to say I don't feel so embarrassed now because I thought I did hear a Taylor Swift influence in your music. So now mostly that with the 1984. No, I don't know what the album was. 1985, whatever it was. Um, that's pretty funny. Hey, this has been fun. I'm glad you come on. We can kind of talk about this, and I want people to check you out. This is
For
it's
sure.
a good album. I listen to a lot of diverse music, so sometimes it's a left turn for people, and this is a good aggressive album. You know, it sounds good. I'm definitely tempted to want to hear it in vinyl now because I do think the production is good and
Mm-hmm.
separate the tones and the frequencies stand out pretty well, despite how like it's a wall of sound, but you can still
Right,
hear the
right.
finer points, which is always a challenge because frequency and certain instruments, especially your bass, or your vocals, depth vocals, and whatever, it's all sorts of overlap, and
Yeah.
it's a,
No,
kind
I
of a
mean
mess.
that's always a challenge for any engineer in extreme music.
But nobody really knows. No one really thinks about that. You know,
I I mean, when you're recording it, you have to think about
I'm
it.
saying fans
Yeah.
though. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
I'm much more
The fans
redundant about
just
the
know, do
fans,
I like this? Do I not like this? That's all they know.
right? And my job, honestly, to anybody who watches the shows, I'll ask questions. I have an idea because I used to work in a studio. I'll share because I try to be the fan asking the
Hmm.
questions because I want to bring everybody to the knowledge of what it takes for an artist to do this, the cost, the production, what they're doing, so they can appreciate it. So when your artist does put it out there, buy it on their site, go see them on town because they might not come next time. Sometimes this is their vacation is spent, roughing it to play some shows that
Hmm.
they enjoy, but it's not a vacation to Greece. It's what I mean. It's sleeping on somebody's
Yeah,
sofa because they're
yeah.
playing a couple clubs for no money. They actually made it in the red and buy the merch so they can put gas to go to the next town. That's what the show's about. Is helping all different types of artists,
Hmm.
and there's no guilty music either for anybody. Makes you happy,
Right.
makes you feel something. Because some music you need to hear. That's what your music's great. You're just in a mood. For me. But sometimes I want to hear
Thanks.
something. I'm in a melancholy mood, and I will put on ABBA or the Bee Gees, or what I'm saying. Just music for everything. So I want to thank you, man. Thanks for coming on the show. It's been great.
For sure. Thanks for having me on, man.